Let me welcome Peter Šurek, who is the CEO of Erste Social Finance Holding, an organization who is dedicated to pursue the social mission and create a lot of social goods. And Peter, maybe it's a great pleasure to have you with us, and maybe I would ask you to briefly introduce the Erste Social Finance Holding and also your role in the organization.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for inviting us to this interesting event and being able to kind of talk about our experience, which is basically coming up from our 10 years of experience already working in Central and Eastern Europe in the social economy. So basically my role is double role. I'm heading social banking at the bank, at Erste Group Bank, which are basically present in 10 markets of Eastern Europe. And within each of these markets, we have a special department for social banking where we develop our activities. And at the same time, as you have mentioned, I'm CEO of Erste Social Finance Holding, which is a special entity that provides specific financial instruments, equity, quasi-equity investments towards the social economy and social enterprises. So that's a very brief introduction of our activity. And I mean, so far we were able to provide in social banking group-wide more than €500 million of financing to micro enterprises, starting enterprises, and non-profits, NGOs, social businesses. So that's the current scale of our activity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You responded a little bit to my second question, which would be what types of groups and entities are you supporting? So So maybe I go a little bit deeper because from the organizations that you are supporting, you're also supporting stakeholders that are not the typical stakeholders who have a really easy access to getting funding. So maybe you can tell a little bit more of what of this kind of sorry, excuse me, I got stuck. So what type of stakeholders are you supporting, and what was the motivation to actually get to support this type of groups?
I mean, the motivation, just to start with your last point, is actually embedded in the history and in the DNA of the organization. So Erste was founded more than 200 years ago, actually as a bank to enable access to finance for ordinary people. So this goal of bringing prosperity to the region is there from the very beginning. And when basically I joined social banking, we were doing an analysis actually where the need is, which client groups, which customer groups actually are having difficult access to finance. And on one hand, these were mainly starting and micro enterprises that were not financed in Eastern Europe. So as a startup, you had to survive the first 2 years, get the money from family and friends and fools. And then after you survived the first 2 years, then you could come to a bank for a financing. So that was the first group where we see there is a market gap. The second one was the whole social sector, meaning non-profits, NGOs, social enterprises, which were also not perceived by the regular banks as clients that we can borrow money to. And then the third client group actually were physical persons, vulnerable people in financial difficulties, in personal bankruptcy, where we have seen that there is a big need to support those clients. So these were actually the three pillars of our strategy and the three segments where we focus our activity towards.
Great, thank you very much. I know that you also prepared the PPT presentation, so let me know when you would like to support yourself with some visual props. But maybe because there's also really interesting topic for us, and we spoke about it a little bit before. It's the social housing initiative and the housing that it's to support to the groups that would not have access to any sort of mortgages or loans to get the funding. And maybe I would like to hear a little bit more from you about where this initiative came from and what do you see as the main ways of moving forward, and maybe what you feel what was the motivation first to start, and then we can deepen the conversation.
Well, I think it would be good if you then show me the slides, because I'll have some of the answers on the slide, so we can jump right away to the third slide. So firstly, when we started with social banking, and it was for me year 2012, so it was very much in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and we have seen lots of de-investments in Central and Eastern Europe. We have seen high unemployment, especially in Southern Europe, reaching up to 40% of young people in Bosnia, Macedonia being unemployed. So when we started with social banking, we looked at very much at solutions for creating and preserving jobs. And it was mainly actually microfinance, but also financing of social economy actors, NGOs, who also contributed heavily to the jobs in the region. But as the time went, we have seen that unemployment became less of an issue. We have actually seen the opposite problem in some of the markets in Eastern Europe. Like, for instance, in Czech Republic, there was an unemployment rate which was actually unhealthy low, meaning that there was not enough workers, not enough people to work in the local companies. But we have seen that, on the other hand, with the low interest rate environment, with the quantitative easing and lots of money on the supply side, that the properties and their prices started to climb substantially. And we have seen that more and more people, not only the most vulnerable client groups, marginalized people, but also already lower middle class, had problem to be able to acquire their home, to be able to buy an apartment, which was basically the most common way how to acquire housing in Eastern Europe since the revolution. And I've just prepared a couple of statistics so that you can see the magnitude of the problem. So on the first chart, left upper corner, you can see in the last 6 years, approximately 5-6 years, how the property prices have developed in our core region, which are these 7 countries in Eastern Europe. And you can see basically that the property prices went up from something around 50% up to 150% in different countries. At the same time, and this is the right upper corner, maybe not so much visible on the computer screen, but it shows actually how many incomes you need to be able to buy a 70 square meter apartment. And this is basically the main benchmark for affordability of housing. And this has increased, I think, in Czech Republic, for instance, to 15-16 years. In the capital cities, even more than 20 years. This means that you need to earn an average salary for 20 years, have no cost, to be able to buy a 70 square meter apartment. So historically, actually, this was, since the measurement, the lowest affordability of housing. Then if you go to the next slide, I will not go to the details of this one. This shows basically the second problem which we are facing in, which is less known, because the property prices, everybody knows that it increased substantially. But the second problem is, and this you can see very nicely in the color code of the first chart, is that in Eastern Europe, we face so-called overcrowding of the existing dwellings. This means that number of people per room in the apartment or in houses is substantially higher than would be a healthy ratio. And compared to West Europe, basically we see that almost all of the markets in Eastern Europe have overcrowded households. This means that, for instance, that the young generation can't afford to move out, but has to stay in their apartment with the parents because of the unaffordability of the housing. So that's the issue, where lots of new apartments would need to be built in Eastern Europe to tackle this problem. And if you then go to the last slide, I'll just mention very briefly, the third problem is that, in contradiction to West Europe, where the social housing, affordable housing, the one before, please. The third sure. one, the problem number 3, where actually historically affordable and social housing associations were founded. If you could go to the previous one, the proportion of social housing apartments or affordable housing apartments is substantially lower in Eastern Europe. As you see on the bottom right slide, comparing Austria with our other markets, in Austria there is more than 25% of housing stock, of apartment stock, which actually is dedicated for affordable housing. These are affordable rental apartments run by low-profit housing associations, where in other CE countries this proportion is very low. And so this basically led to the problem which we have seen on the housing side, that more and more people have problems to be able to have a decent housing for themselves. And that's why we have prepared the solutions which are then on the next slides described.
So this one or the next one? Sorry, because I only see the one slide at the time.
This one is fine. So on one hand, we were looking at what could be the solutions for helping the individuals to acquire the housing, what could be the institutional solutions. And of course, there is always this question mark whether the ownership is the solution or the rental apartment. So no ownership can be a solution. So we have tried to design and pilot different initiatives, also considering different setup, which we have in various countries. So when talking about the topic also which you discussed, the accommodation for refugees, that was actually before the Ukraine crisis almost solely the problem of Austria, because basically all the refugees waves were going to the wealthy West European countries like Austria, Germany, Sweden. So we didn't have these challenges in Eastern Europe. And in Austria, what we have come up with is as a rental microloan for the apartment deposit. So if you want to rent an apartment in Austria, you need to bring at the beginning 3 to 4 monthly rents as a deposit. And of course, many of the refugees and vulnerable people don't have the money that they can immediately put to the landlord as a deposit for renting the apartment. So that was a special facility which we have started here in Austria, supporting people on the rental side to be able to help refugees to move from the mass accommodation provided by state to rental apartments. The other topic, if you look at the left upper corner, is the housing microloan, which I'll be talking about in more details in the next slide. And that was a special project which we done with NGO partners in Slovakia, helping especially Roma communities which are living in these slum-like settlements in Eastern Europe, especially in Slovakia, to move in the self-developed houses. So I'll talk about this a bit later. Then a similar topic like the rental microcredit is this cooperative apartment down payment loan. So if you in Austria want to go to a cooperative, which is like a cheaper rent apartment, then you need to pay something approximately of 20,000-30,000 euros as your own contribution to the cooperative apartment. So we also develop a special product which can help people to finance that contribution which needs to be paid out. And then basically on the bottom is the whole project finance supporting different players, but also our own actually companies which we established that are having ambition to build affordable rental houses in Eastern Europe. So that's basically the lower part. And our bank is committed to invest there also in means of our equity and the debt financing which we provide into that topic. And our ambition is to build in the next years up to 2030 approximately 15,000 affordable rental apartments in Austria and Central and Eastern Europe. So that's the complex picture on the solutions, because there is not one single solution that can help and solve different particular issues. And I would just like to mention today a bit more the most complex and maybe most impactful project which we run in Slovakia. And if you can move to the next slide, it's basically tackling the issue which is actually a shame for Europe, that we still have these Roma settlements in multiple of our countries where people actually live in the sheds from wood or aluminium, like somewhere in really developing countries. So what is basically the problem, as you see on the slide? It's the unemployment of this community, very low education, poor health, and extreme poverty. And this means there is no regular access to finance for these people. There is no regular access to land. that they can build their house. They have very limited access to the job market. And so how we have designed the program, actually coming up from the methodology developed by Habitat for Humanity for developing countries. The solution basically starts with working with the local community, and this is done by our NGO partners, where they provide financial literacy training, financial education, and prepare community for building of their own new houses. At the same time, we work very closely with the local city council, with the local mayors, because the precondition is actually that there will be legally accessible land where these families can build their regular houses. So the city needs to have a plot which then can be bought by these people for affordable price. And in this first year, all these families go through this training, could go through job training, because they need to have a job when they are supposed to get financing from us. So we help them to deal with their old debts. We help them to understand the basic principles, how to manage private household budget. And then they have to save every month 50 euros. And if they manage the 12-month saving, then this is enough money to buy the plot usually, because these plots are very cheap. They are in a small villages where these people are currently living nearby and where they also want to stay. And then we provide them a micro loan for building the house, but the family has to build the house themselves. So actually we are just reimbursing the cost of the building material and provide housing assistants, construction advisors who are helping people how to build the house. And that's very important part of the whole concept, because then actually the family has to contribute and is contributing to the house creation. They learn also new skills, which are important also for them on the job market to be able to be more successful to get a job. And basically, ultimately, as you can see on the next slide, is that people are moving from their current sheds and slums into a decent houses, which of course are small, but we are talking about investment of 15,000 euros. So for 15,000 euros, people are able to build such a house and have some basic equipment inside of the houses with the heating, which is basically on the local wood, and with the basic quality of living, which is substantially better than what they had before. So far, as you have seen on the slide, we were able to finish 60 houses. There are 40 more in the construction process. And we see that this is changing the lives of these people, because they move from a shed where they have no running water, no electricity almost, just a very, very unhealthy heating, into regular decent house. And we see the changes on their educational performance of the kids. We see the changes in the job performance of the parents, that all of actually the people who have these houses are having a regular working relationship and are basically part of the labor force. So that's in a very short words how the projects are working, and that we see as a highly impactful pilot, which now shall be also scaled by the EU funding in other markets like Romania and Bulgaria.
Thank you very much for sharing that. This is a very interesting and motivating story, that if there is the will, there is a way to actually improve the life of a lot of people. We have 1 minute left. So I don't know if there are any questions from the audience. If yes, you can put it in the chat. Sorry, there is one question from Charlotte. Could this project in Slovakia also be targeting refugees and migrants?
That's a very, very good question. I mean, it very much depends on the situation and the future plans of these refugees, because the project in Slovakia was really targeted for this specific community, which is basically currently living in a very desperate housing situation. When talking about the refugees, we see more a solution having rental affordable apartments where these families can be accommodated, which of course in many countries would still need to be built. Of course, the unknown variable is whether the refugees would stay long term in this country or they would just need a temporary accommodation. And we'll go basically back when talking now about Ukrainians. Many of them would like to go back to their home country and help to rebuild it after the war. So that the solution very much depends on that. So I believe for refugees, the rental affordable apartments probably would be a better solution than to kind of move into the direction of building a new house in a country where you don't know if you will stay. So that would be probably my short answer to this topic, which is a very, very complex one. And many countries, especially Poland, basically is having substantial problems how to provide accommodation for so many people.
Thank you very much for this answer. And unfortunately, we just came to an end. But for everybody who was attending this session, if you will have any questions to Peter regarding any of the things that were mentioned today, please let us know to the organizers so we can share the questions with Peter and we make sure that the non-question comes unanswered. So Peter, thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you for sharing the insight of what you are doing regarding social housing. And I wish you all a wonderful afternoon and many interesting conversation during the Social Finance Day. Thank you very much.